Join us and see what life looks like from a medium's perspective. With Tracey Lockwood, the medium's medium. We'll explore the tools of psychic development, hear stories and experiences from the other side, and learn to listen to our natural intuition. Now, our host, Tracey Lockwood.
Hello, beautiful lights, and welcome to another episode of From a Medium's Perspective. For those of you that are watching on video, I know you were like, who is that person over there? But you have to wait just a minute so that I can do some shameless self-promotion first. If you are interested in developing your intuitive abilities and your mediumship skills and psychic array of gifts, then I just offer private and group training. I also offer a certification program, 12 weeks, that's a group training, or it can be taken privately, and so much more. So you can check that out on my website at mediumtraceylockwood.com. Well, I know you're like, okay, Tracey, we know you do that stuff. So who's this? Who's this? Before I give you her name, and some of you may recognize her already, but before I give you her name, I do want to tell you a little bit about her. One of the things I like best about her impact on the field of psychic mediumship and intuition in general is that she has managed to demystify intuition. And that's a really important thing because a lot of times there's a great deal of misunderstanding about what it is. And she demonstrates that it is quite useful in practical aspects of life and in business and science and medicine and in personal growth as well. She has trained literally thousands of people, and they include scientists, celebrities, business owners and executives, and other professionals. And she's been featured in a lot of publications. To name them all, it would be a little bit lengthy, but I'll just mention some that everybody will recognize, which is Newsweek, New York Magazine, The Independent, Bottom Line, Cosmopolitan, Marie Claire and People magazine. And she speaks regularly in the US and abroad, and she's appeared on many television shows, CNN, Fox News, Good Morning America, the Oprah Winfrey Show, The View, and she's a best-selling author, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of her books today, but I just had to share a couple of quotes. You'll recognize too these people. Brad Pitt says that I believe in the gut, and I believe in our guest today, which I'll give you her name in just a second. And Deepak Chopra said that she is brilliant and practical, and if you follow the suggestions in her book, it would be impossible for you to avoid unparalleled success and fulfillment. And she works as a highly recognized intuitive with major corporations, drug research development, and scientists around and about. And she is known as the Psychic of Wall Street. I'd love to introduce to you today Laura Day. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So happy to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm just thrilled. I am just thrilled. I'm going to put the volume up and hope that that works well. Yeah, and I'll just cut that little part out, no problem. So welcome, Laura, to the show today. I wanted to let our listeners know that lots of times they like to snoop and check out our guests while they're with me. And so I just wanted to give your website address to them. And it's quite simple. Yes, it's laura-day.com. Yes.
Actually, I think we even took the dash out. You can get to it now just with lauraday, DAY.com.
Wonderful. lauraday.com. There we go. Excellent, excellent. So I think that I have seen you on television shows or possibly YouTube in your glory there. And I was really taken by the fact that you really are demystifying, kind of taking the woo-woo out of the intuitive process. And I'm really impressed with that. And you wrote an entire book on it called The Circle. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I started as an intuitive actually in my early 20s. I started as a lab rat when universities and governments were really interested in the extended capacities of the human mind. So can someone view a remote location? Can someone predict the future? Can someone, with their mind's eye, go into a body and assess its well-being? Can someone take a drug and see how it's going to work against a certain illness? And so I wasn't introduced to intuition through mysticism. So I stayed on that path. So when people say I demystify intuition, it gives me a little too much credit. I learned the mysticism, far later from people like Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer and, all of these people who really did have, a more spiritual bent. But in the beginning, so I was a lab rat, and one of these experiments without my permission was televised. So I had this instant following of people who wanted me to do what I did, but I didn't even really have a name for it. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've found and still find really important is that the only difference, and I tell my students this all the time, the only difference between psychic and psychotic is that your information is correct. Otherwise, you just...
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Yes.
So it was really important to me, personally, also coming from a family that has a lot of suicide and mental illness, because, wide open minds can go either way. It was really important to me to use my intuition in ways where I could see when I was right and see when I was wrong. And in the early 80s, there was a lot of, channeling going on. I am Guhu Maharaji Boo Boo, and I am going to tell you the truth. Mm. And I found that, and still find it, deeply disturbing. Because one of the things that I am so aware of, and even more so after 40 years of teaching, is everybody has access not only to the truth, but to the truth in their language, in the language that allows them to use it, whether it's the language of investing or business, or the language of energy or color or drama. Everyone has access. So yeah. That is absolutely, my soapbox. And my books are workshops. My books are intended to say, okay, you have this ability. You may not know you have this ability. And here is how to train this ability to use it in your real life to make this life better.
I really like that. I often correlate the different types of expressions of intuition along an intuitive spectrum with the gifts that are mentioned in the Bible, because people don't make that association. And a lot of times they don't make that association between things that occur for them naturally in their life. You don't usually, walk down the street and hear, don't go down that street, and go, I have had a clairaudient experience. We don't do that. It's just more of a very natural aspect to human existence. And I define the intuitive spectrum kind of from instinct, where it's good, bad, safe, not safe, stay, run, kind of binary body things. And then it goes into our intuitive, but still with our left brain. We're not really completely disconnected from our left brain, but we just know things. And then going on from there into psychic, ability, which is when wisdom starts moving through us naturally.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
and then,
You
you know,
call
the
it,
others.
I mean, you know, I always tell people that a good sociopath is intuitive.
Absolutely. It's malevolent, a malevolent intuition or empathy or, yeah.
Not even, you know, I always think of energy as amorphous. Until we direct it, it isn't anything. And
Yeah, I say energy follows focus.
yeah, energy
Absolutely.
follows focus. And absolutely. And so I think that it's really, you know, we train our intellect, we train our emotions, or we'd all be raping and pillaging. You know, we train these things. And it's so important to train intuition, because often intuition is still trying to find us those outdated things that our subconscious wants. So we think we're going into a meeting to be able to get the job, but actually our subconscious is using intuition to get data to go into the meeting to not threaten daddy, even though daddy's been dead for 10 years. So it's
yes. Oh yeah.
to train intuition. And also, you know, people think of intuition as something that's good, but your subconscious makes decisions a full 7 seconds before your conscious mind's aware of them. So I am grabbing this water bottle, but 7 seconds before I thought, oh, I'm going to grab this water bottle, my subconscious, beneath my awareness,
yes,
did that. So our intuition is often acting out things that we're not conscious of. And the more that we can use intuition and intellect and everything else from consciousness, the more we really create in our, what my friend Deanna Davino used to call our earth reality.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's important. I mean, I think that the new age has many wonderful things, but has done people a disservice.
Yeah.
Saying life isn't hard, it's just you're doing it wrong. That's not true. Life is challenging.
Yes, it is.
No matter how intuitive you are. And, you know, I work with all the top people who supposedly we all have this mastered. No, we all create crap. We all have challenges. Yeah. What intuition does is it allows you to say, oh, wow, I've created this crap in my life for a reason. Let me note what that reason is, and let me use intuition to make something wonderful out of this.
Yes, yes. You alluded to sort of the 7-second rule, and I know that I've seen that demonstrated, that we know what's coming in our subconscious before it hits our mind.
Not that we know what's coming, the subconscious makes the decision before. I think you're referring to an experiment on precognition
mm-hmm.
they did.
Where they flash a picture and someone has the emotion before the picture.
Right. That's precognition. That's a different experiment.
Okay.
Yeah, and
clarify the difference for our listeners and for me too.
Okay. So the subconscious making a decision is, I mean, whenever you say something and wish you could have taken it back, it's often the you were 30 years ago who's saying it, who you're not really aware of anymore. You're not thinking, oh, I want to, you know, step in it, you know, so I'm going to say this. It's an impulse from old patterning. So the subconscious says, you know, I'm going to push this person, and you push them without consciously saying, oh my goodness, I'm going to push this person. That's not a good idea.
Right. No stopgap. Mm-hmm.
Which is my job. I mean, I make my living in precognition for companies.
Yes.
I tell them what I see in the future. And recently, because we now can measure with fair accuracy many of the functions of the brain, there was an experiment done and replicated where they showed that people have a reaction to a photo they will be shown.
Yes.
Have it in advance, not a full 7 seconds. But so that showed that, yes, precognition exists. And actually, and I never pronounce this right, Maimonides Medical Center, 50 or 60 years ago, and this is on video, although I guess it's on film. I don't know if they had video back then, but they did a lot of experiments on sleep telepathy, where someone in a separate room would look at an image, and then someone else in a separate room, no contact, they'd have them go to sleep with the intention of viewing in their mind's eye that image. And when they woke up, they would draw or describe the image. So it was really kind of the first, that I know of at least, regulated, conclusive proof that we do communicate this way. And for me, you know, as much as I train people to get accurate data, to be able to get information to make better investments, or evaluate a property before buying it, or look in the future and see what a currency will do, I actually think one of the most useful parts of intuitive training, and the reason why it improves life, is that you begin to realize how much you are being, you know, inundated at every moment with other people's thoughts and other people's feelings. And you realize depression's a communicable disease, anger is a communicable disease, despair is a communicable disease, and that what the circle, and I'm going to hold up my little book. So I do this every day.
Yeah, hold it so they can really see the book.
This is my fourth book.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a process I do every day. And it's really a process of saying, okay, what am I going to build? And now how do I inhabit myself more fully so that I'm not battered around by everybody's telepathy, by mediumship, which I define mediumship a little differently than many.
Mm-hmm.
Mediumship is becoming what it is you're thinking about. So it's
like a physical manifestation. Yeah, that's interesting. I've actually had that thought, that I sat for physical mediumship for a while and started getting physical phenomenon happening. And then I just sort of didn't anymore. And then I realized that in my life, I am doing that. And I've never heard anyone else make that connection.
So
that's so interesting.
This
Yeah.
is a psychic textbook. It's called How to Rule the World from Your Couch. And I wrote it.
I love that. I love that. How to rule the world from your couch. That's awesome.
My couch, and I do my work not with this much makeup on, but
right.
I can bring the computer over and show you. I haven't changed the slipcover since 2009. But it's a psychic textbook. And one of the things I have people do with each of the intuitive abilities, like precognition, seeing the future, telepathy, mind reading in the moment, remote viewing, seeing a remote location, information gathering, which is basically allowing your attention to travel and get information. One of the things that I have people do is scrupulously go through who's in my head. So who am I having a conversation with that maybe is not a productive conversation for me to have, and train them to redirect that. Who is in my body? So who?
Yes. I'm sorry. I love that, because to me, mediumship is different than psychic, because mediumship is being able to identify 100% of the time where is the information coming from. And you're applying it in such a practical way. It's great.
You know, I mean, sometimes, so mediumship is, when I train my students in mediumship, what I'm training them to do is, instead of, for example, looking at a company intuitively with their mind's eye and evaluating it and then moving it around in time, I'm asking them to become the company and speak from the eye. And of course, you can use it for all different kinds of things. But, you know, when people, I mean, I think that mediumship, for example, when people use it to speak to somebody they've lost to death, that can be useful. It also cannot be useful, because mourning is a part of life. I mean, my new book, which I'm editing now, it's my 7th book. One of the things that I really speak to very strongly is the fact that spirit is stagnant. It's perfect, but it's stagnant. We individuals who get up every morning and do the courageous battle, and no matter how crappy you're doing it, it is a courageous battle to live life, to interact, to try to whatever failing degree we do, and I speak for myself, to be a halfway decent person, to live with so much insecurity and to negotiate all the time the physical reality. We evolve spirit by the very challenging, often pleasurable, thank God, task of being a human being.
Yes.
And it's really important that we don't transplant our humanity with spirituality, because mourning, for example, is an important thing. When you have lost somebody on a physical plane, it's not important to be in touch with them except to assist them, and often that's better done by somebody else. It's important to mourn, to learn that human ability of losing and mourning and reconstructing and moving forward. You know, so I think that the esoteric uses of a lot of these things that we consider, I don't call them psychic skills, because I don't think psychic really.
I label myself a professional psychic medium instructor or whatever, but I don't even like the term psychic medium, because I just feel like it's archaic. It's not an effective way of communicating what it is that we do. You know,
and it, means we wear purple, which clearly neither of us.
Oh yes, and long hair and a turban with a big jewel.
I do well with turbans, but so what I really, I think we live in such a culture of experts, and it's important to know that the person sitting next to you in a coffee shop may have your answers. And one of the things that I do with my trainings and with my books is to really make people aware that there are ways to ask people a question where you will get an intuitive response, and that we shouldn't make experts out of people. And of course, I put us out of business that way, but it's really important to realize that anybody can be your expert, because we need to go back to communities. I mean, we don't use each other and allow each other to be useful in ways that would enrich our lives, enrich our communities, enrich our children, enrich our businesses. And it's so important. Everybody. I go around the country and I do these free healing events, and they're huge. 400 or 500 people show up, and I always have 10 other healers because I don't have a private healing practice. I only do it in groups. Mm-hmm. So I always have like 10 other healers, and people will line up in front of me, and it's exactly the same energy.
Yes.
We're all channeling the same. These are trained healers. You train your channel to be open, but these are trained healers. And so I tell people, I understand you want the honey and the bear. That's the exact same honey you get for an eighth of the price in a cleaner glass jar.
Yes.
But I'm the honey in the bear, and we have to stop honey in the bear thinking.
Yes, yes, and yes.
We don't. Right?
I think everything speaks. Literally everything speaks. Like when I'm teaching the tools that I implement, there's nothing magic about the tools. A rock is a rock. Do you know what I mean? But that shift that happens, and whether you're looking at a paint chip or a blank wall or a ribbon or a tarot card or whatever you're looking at, everything speaks. And in the grocery line, you will overhear bits of conversation that have the answer to the question. The bumper sticker, everything speaks.
That's so funny. I always, one of the things that and I'm sure you get this from your students, my students say, well, okay, there was distraction when I was doing the reading. And I'm like, when you're doing a reading, your distraction is information. You're noticing what you notice for a reason, and the reading is about reporting it and referencing it to your target. And by target, I mean your question. And people are getting very detailed, accurate information all the time, but they don't know their questions. And one of the things that the circle asks you to do is be aware of your questions, so you know when you've gotten the answer. And I think a lot of the reason, we don't get aware of our questions is that we have grown up in a culture where we are disempowered. There's always someone smarter or more beautiful or more sensational or more. And the reality is, and I don't mean this in the gushy, I'm your mommy sense, there is only one you.
That's
and
right.
You have a unique gift, and your job is not only to find it, but to put it in the world. And if you do that, you will be successful. I mean, my son is so adorable. My son, he's 26 and he's a producer and he's, a guy. And he says, "Ma, you're a genius. Not because you're smart. You're a genius because you took something nobody believes in that you can do and made it mainstream."
Yes.
And you can do it. Whether what you do is you are the carburetor expert and you really love, and you have a magic touch with carburetors, you can become someone amazing. But people tend to, think if it's not pre-packaged the way it needs to be,
or it doesn't match what somebody else is doing,
that it's not worthwhile. And we're really good. One of the sad things about telepathy is the ability to hear what people think. And one of the things that has really powerfully impacted me, that I've also had to use as a lesson for myself, is that nobody will ever think about me the horrible things I think about myself. And that is true of almost everybody. I mean, there are a few narcissists who on the surface, at least, but even then you go down deep and you want to cry.
Right, yes.
Nobody will ever judge you as harshly as you judge yourself. And self-love, real self-love is so difficult. And I think that self-love does start with that first ego center of I am important enough not only to survive, but to thrive and survive abundantly. And when you not only kind of repeat that through your actions and really call yourself on the thoughts that don't support that, and when you employ things that aren't so fun, like discipline, act in your own best interest, what you will notice is your life completely reforms itself.
Yeah, that is such a shift. And, that difference between lip speak or, just talking it, or blindly saying some type of an affirmation, like rubbing a lucky stone, hoping that it's going to actually do something, versus allowing yourself to become that. You were talking about that process, living.
But also your affirmations, your subconscious, once again, your subconscious is your BS meter. So when you say to yourself, I am strong, happy, and beautiful, and you're not, your subconscious, the part you can't really hear audibly.
Yes, yeah.
I don't trust you. You're full of it. You are not a reliable source.
Right.
However, when you say, even though I am feeling like a worthless piece of so-and-so, I'm what I have, and I love me as best I can, and I'm going to make the best of this day. And if I put one foot in front of the other, I'm going to get where I'm going. If your affirmations are true things, first of all, the exercise in finding the true empowering thing is 90% of the work. And second of all, then your affirmations actually override your habitual patterned thinking. And that is really, in many ways, the gift. How do we override the negative patterning? And that's really what the circle is about. It is a daily practice to put in place the kind of patterning that will support your creating the life you want, because your life is just a reflection of you.
And it does eventually accumulate. Like if you do set your focus in one direction, there will be a day where that affirmation resonates too.
I'm more of a proponent of finding an affirmation that resonates and then having it grow.
Oh, I'm not a big affirmation person. Yeah, but what I mean is, like, what would normally be an affirmation that would be discordant and resistant to your accepting it, as you do those steps like you're talking about and be authentic with your self-talk and move in that direction, there is a day where you can say that. Example, I've, dealt for several years for many reasons, brain injury, divorce, blah, 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 with getting a firm financial base under me. And I was really pleased the other day because I had a situation where I sort of had a personal choice how to handle it. And I ended up just telling myself, you know what, I trust in my prosperity. And if I had tried to use the affirmation, I trust in my prosperity, I would have had to say it with a sarcastic attitude. But I realized that I had moved a little further along in that direction.
Wonderful feeling, because the courage to move out of our comfort zone, even if our comfort zone is painful, is a huge thing.
And do you find it self-perpetuating though? Because if you allow yourself to take that one step and then it just feels better, so then you take another one and then it's like, oh, I like this,
To some degree, I think it's like a child's fever, where a child gets an illness and they're sick for a couple days and they gradually get better and then they get better and then they get stronger, and then you really know they're going to get well when the fever peaks and they get so much worse and they wake up the next day and they're fine.
Right, and they're hungry. Yes.
I do think there is
interesting.
always
sort of a
step forward, step back, but the one step back is often where we really get to treasure our forward movement and do the cleanup, make sure there aren't any little landmines that we've left behind. And I also think it's very important to know where you're not intuitive. So I am very intuitive and good with money. I am not very intuitive about relationships. I certainly had a very traumatic childhood, and I have my subconscious patterning to choose dysfunction is something that I'm still working on. So the last time I was single, I decided, you know what, maybe this lifetime, this is not going to be something that I am going to be able to clean up, or maybe not this decade. So instead of dating and going out to dinner with people who liked me at parties or who I liked, what I did was I did not date anyone who approached me or anyone I was, if I was in the environment that I was attracted to, I did not date them. And I made a point of not doing it because I realized if someone saw me, that they would be someone who would be dependent and I would be victimized. And if I picked someone, they would be someone who needed help. That was what my patterning was. So I asked two of my girlfriends to introduce me to men who they had known at least 10 years, who were good to their ex-wives, who were good fathers, and who had nothing to do with Hollywood. That's an aside. And those were the only men I dated. And I met my extraordinary husband. And when I first met him, he was not interesting to me. He had no deep, thick, interesting pain. He had no passionate rage and hatred for the world. He had no
romantic expression, no, nothing.
He was this good, solid, handsome, delicious human being, and I was completely not interested for our first few dates. And I had a 3-date rule, thank heavens. Because on the 3rd date rule, I realized what wasn't interesting was that there was nothing to fix.
Mm.
And I have been with him 7 years, married
Aw.
4. And I am so grateful for the discipline, because believe me, during those years that I was single, I was so hungry. I was so, and of course we all tell ourselves the same thing. No one will ever love me. I'm in my 50s. I'm blah, blah, blah. I'm devoted to my child. No one's going to do da, da, da. We all have our excuses. And the only thing I didn't get is he is a screenwriter and a TV writer, so he does have something to do with Hollywood. But 4 out of 5 is not bad.
It's not-
All the places where your intuition doesn't work, and those are the places where you get advice. The places where your intuition does work, those are the places that you give. Those are the places that you trust yourself. So I can read somebody else's relationship perfectly well.
Sure. Yeah.
But my own, I can't get through my own patterning. And so, know your Achilles heel, because that is as valuable as knowing your strengths. And we all have them. We all have this image, and believe me, we sure see this in the New Age movement. People don't show their vulnerabilities, because if they do, they lose business. And I really admire that you said, I struggle with money. It is very important not to give people the false impression that they're not worthwhile because they don't have it all together. Because you know what you call someone who has it all together? Dead.
Yeah. I remember when I started, I won't mention where, but I was in training with mediums. And first, the training was very controlled. Like, it's almost like, okay, we know all this stuff and we'll let you see it for just a second, but that's all. So there was no effort to convey an understanding of how that worked, or to give an opportunity to work. But on top of that, they would not receive messages that their students would get for them.
Wow, are you kidding? I bet.
No, I'm not kidding.
Oh,
and I remember that feeling, like, when you're a kid and you have a really good intent and you go up to someone and they like smack you down and you're like, oh, they didn't accept my gift. It was that kind of feeling. And then I ended up going to Arthur Findlay College of Psychic Science in England. And it was like, welcome, mediums, come in. We are all talented. Let's see what we can do. It's fun, And the difference in that climate was so massive. And that's what it reminded me of with what you were saying.
Yes, and it's so, I don't actually do spiritual mediumship for clients, but there was someone who was a friend of a friend who was in my home the other day interviewing me, actually, and they were asking me all these questions about this person who had died, and I said, why don't you ask the person?
Right.
This person is right here. You ask them.
Yes.
Don't give me the only access, because the reality is we are living in such a multi-layered reality. And if you allow yourself to experience it, you will. And of course, you don't want to experience it all the time.
No.
It's not healthy. I have 2 dead siblings. It is not healthy to be wide open. I have been extremely fortunate because I was trained by being tested. So in a sense, my intuition was always directed by others, and then directed by commerce. So it didn't eat me. I channeled it. But it's really something that you don't want to be wide open. And for example, a lot of people want to do my workshops with their kids, and I'm like, no, if the person is not an adult, they don't belong in a place where they're opening up their intuition. They're still developing their ego. And an ego is a very important thing to have, because an ego is the thing that takes all of that infinite energy and creates in your body and creates in the world. And that's what we want. We want to create wonderful lives for ourselves, for our communities, for our children, and for our world. And I think that that is the use of, that's why my first book is called Practical Intuition. You know, forget past lives for the moment. Even
Yes.
dead people, limit it to 5 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
Use your intuition to enrich this very wonderful obstacle course that you're on called life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. What a transformation from lab rat to leader you've made. What I just, this is sort of random and kind of goes back to the beginning of what we were talking about, but what made you, what was your impetus to sit for the testing that you went through at the beginning? Like what triggered that? What was the
synchronicity, meaningful coincidence. So I was, you know, in my very early 20s, and I was pretty lost. You know, my father had remarried. So my mother had committed suicide when I was 14. My father had remarried. I didn't really have a home. I was so kind of stunned from my childhood. I didn't have a direction. I mean, I was really, people used to say, I feel like I can put my hand right through you. That's how ethereal you are. And I was really kind of begging the way young people do, just saying, please, why, you know, show me something. I don't know. I'm no use to anybody. I'm not loved by, you know. And I wasted my time. I'm a science nerd. I went to Stuyvesant, which is a math and science school for math and science nerds.
I've got that side too. Yeah.
I was watching one of the nerd channels, and on this nerd channel was a small segment on experiments with the human mind. And I thought, well, I thought everyone could do that. Or it was mental illness that someone needed better meds for. But I was stunned that anyone was even interested in what, to me, I thought everyone's reality. So I called them up.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I can do what you're talking about. And they said, come in. And I came in. And this is in the foreword of my first book, Practical Intuition. One of the professors and researchers put a name in an envelope. Well, first he was going on and on, this is how it works and blah, blah, blah. I'm, of course, you know, I don't know, 21, 22, and it's like, oh, please, you know, can I have a couple?
Too many words, yeah.
So I said to him, put a name in an envelope and give it to me. So he did, and I saw two separate men, and I described them each. I described their physical being. One had MS, which I didn't know the word for, but I described the pathology. Uh-huh. One I felt was going to have some troubles, which I described in detail. And he was kind of baffled. And he said, open the envelope. So I opened it. Oh, and one, I saw all these paintings and colors. So I opened it, and it was his first name. The man, which I didn't know because I was at the age where everyone's Mr. or, you know, Dr. or Mrs. And he said, well, I put my name in it. That's my name, but I don't understand what this other stuff is. You were right about me, but, and then he said, oh my goodness, his best friend had the same name and had MS and was
interesting.
So I had described both of them. So immediately, you know, they called, this was in conjunction with Paris and South America, and they basically called all these people, and I got passed around. And for me, it was wonderful because, you know, companies, especially once they televised one of the tests, all these people and companies would approach me, and I was still young enough that the really weird stuff I stayed away from. But, you know, an engineering company would say, can you tell me what's wrong with this prototype? And I'd say, well, I don't know, but I'll try. Mm. And so I learned the I don't know, but I'll try way, because I had no pony in the race. I didn't care if this was mental illness, I wanted to be on good meds and wanted to treat it. And if it was an ability, then I wanted to use it. I just wanted a place in the world. I was kind of an orphan. Yeah. And so I learned by, I don't know, I'll try. Can you find buried artifacts? I don't know, I'll try. Can you find oil on a map? I don't know, I'll try. And I did, and I still, one of the hardest things I think in training intuition is that it's not 100%. Nothing is ever 100%. I'm not even sure taxes and death are 100%.
Because we're a filter.
Pardon?
Because we're a filter, or why do you think that is?
Because things are interpreted.
Mm-hmm.
So the worst business error I ever made in a reading was because I misinterpreted my information.
Yes, that's easy to do. We either get something and we jump to a conclusion, or we don't feel it through, or we get a symbol, but it just kind of hangs in the air. Yeah.
Actually, for this book cover, I was having hair and makeup done before the photo shoot.
Uh-huh.
And the Japanese, there was just that, the nuclear spill, and it was about the Japanese market, and I was doing it quickly and I wasn't focusing. But sometimes we misinterpret, and anyone who tells you they're 100% is someone to run and not walk away from, because it just doesn't exist. And even if it existed, you have to be able to put information forward in a way that someone can apply it.
Yeah.
Whole other, you can tell me how to turn on my TV, but since I can't follow a direction that has more than 3 steps, I'm still not going to be able to do it. I still, my husband changed our whole cable system. I can't turn on our TV. Now, I work intuitively on complex mechanical, projects. I mean, on engineering projects, and I cannot seem to work FiOS.
So interesting. Yeah, it's interesting, the different arenas. And I think that's another thing, like when I speak with you, and I feel like you've sort of pushed the walls that contained limitations back for people, and for yourself too. And I don't know, it's just a great sense, like everybody does have their own specialty, arena, forte, gift, however you want to put that, and not limiting it, and not seeing that what we can't do is not as important as what we can do,
And, everybody is intuitive in 2 major areas. If they're successful, they're intuitive in their area of expertise. So my husband is very intuitive about how to make a book into something that people can engage with on screen. My third cousin, who is an very well-known endocrinologist and a fabulous guy, he is very intuitive about male endocrinology. So your intuition is always engaged in what you're interested in and good at, but your intuition is also always engaged in your area of neurotic preoccupation. So if you're a hypochondriac looking for your next illness to have misdiagnosed by a doctor, your intuition will help you do that, or it will help you find your next disastrous relationship where maybe you can save mommy who's already dead. It will help you find the next place you can be put down at work and not be promoted. That is why it's so important to train intuition, the way we train intellect, the way we train emotions, to train it to serve us and to serve others, because ultimately we are who we're with.
Yeah.
Why buy a beautiful dress if nobody sees it? Right? We are who we share with.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even, when my son went to college, I passed out cold one day and realized, I'd forgotten to eat for days because I had no one to eat with. Made me reevaluate my social life.
What do you think you're headed for? I know you are working on some things. I don't know what you can share and what you can't. What are some of your?
I am an open book because I
Yeah.
assume, my students often say to me, wow, you're so honest about how defective you are. And I say, because I know you all on some level already know how defective I am. So instead of put up a false front, which you're going to see through anyway,
Right.
come out there with it.
Because we all are intuitive, telepathic, empathic. Yes.
I have written a futuristic novel for young adults, which I think, unfortunately, is also somewhat precognitive. So I got a vision of the future, fictionalized it, and I wrote a young adult book, which I'm now editing. And I have a book that I am also editing on the ego. And it's really, how do we take energy? How do we take the energy of spirit and create great lives? Because I think, everybody's pain hurts. I mean, one of the things that I think keeps people from allowing themselves to develop their intuition is that when you can experience others, you really realize how brave everybody is.
Yes.
How hard things are for many people. And you want to do something about it. So as a writer, all my books are about how do you do something for yourself without paying somebody else? How do you do something for yourself?
Right.
So this is a book about how do you use that prism, which is your ego, and clear it from the injuries of the past so that you create what you intend. Because we do, everyone is trying to do their best for themselves. When someone says, oh, well, if my life is a reflection of me, then I must be, terrible. Well, no, your life is a reflection to a large degree of the subconscious injury that you have experienced.
Yes.
And so when you create those conscious goals and you take subtle, intuitive, healing, cognitive actions to change those patterns, what you notice is your life with great ease begins to unfold. And that's the process as a teacher that I love to see. And I want to give people tools. All of my books are written so that you can do the book, master the skill, and go teach it. I think we need to teach intuition and healing in community because, I am not above sitting on a bus having a headache saying to some, stranger that I've been chatting with, I really believe in healing. So I have a terrible headache. Could you just put your hands on my head and feel my whole head relaxing and feeling good? And they do a healing.
Yeah.
And these are such powerful abilities. I mean, really life-changing, powerful, studied, proven abilities that are free, that everybody has, that we don't use. And it's mind-boggling. It's the way people eat crap and take drugs to fix their bad eating, instead of just eating well.
Right.
And not having the pain. We have been trained, again, we've been programmed to create our own pain. And when I say we, I include myself. I mean, I create the same drama in my life over and over again. And then I say, okay, let me work with this drama now. I'm going to focus on working on creating a wonderful relationship. Let intuition show me what I need to do. Let me use different techniques to unravel the habits that get me into trouble. Let me focus on that, or let me focus on getting my financial reality in order. Or, right now I'm focusing on having discipline again, because I've kind of been a spoiled brat for 9 years and just, had fun. And now I really want to be doing different things in the world again. So let me focus on that. And when you do that, intellect, intuition, your history, your feelings, your community, your friends, everything you do organically builds that life that you want.
Yeah. would you be willing to share sort of exercise or something that people could do on their own? I'm always trying to help people find, not help them, but like create options for them to try things from a different angle. Is there something that pops in mind?
Yes, and once again, you know, these are so simple. So I want to give a couple easy things you can do every day. When you wake up in the morning, notice who you're talking to in your head, notice what you're feeling, and really look at those conversations and say, is this helping me? And if not, have a conversation you choose, maybe with your future love, maybe with a future backer for your business, maybe even with your future self. Have a way, and you'll have to do this 100 times a day to reroute your telepathy, but redirect it. Everything takes discipline. Redirect it, because you'll find that then you start creating positive things. The other thing is, who's in me? And when you ask that question, you will really begin to train yourself to get a flash. Oh, this person's in me, they're having a hard time. Or this person's in me and they're feeling lazy, and so I'm feeling lazy. And you'll begin to do something which in the circle, the second element is called embodiment. And what embodiment is engaging all of your 5 senses and experiencing your best self, which sounds easy. It's actually incredibly difficult to do.
Interesting, yeah.
So, you know, in my case, it would be me with my son not living 1,000 miles away, but sitting here at the table, my work done, my books are edited, my husband's home for dinner. You know, the experience, and really allow that experience. I call that embodiment, because what you do is you fill yourself up with your best you. What happens when you do that, when you create the mental space, when you create the physical space, and when you embody, which gives you your goals, your targets, so to speak, what you do is you send out a different kind of telepathy, and you'll notice, almost as if by magic, things shift around you. You begin to bump into pieces of a new reality. My other favorite exercise, and I like exercises that just allow life to get a little bit easier.
Yes.
Before you go to sleep, remember the reality that now everything from astronomy to biology is verifying for us, that we are one unified field. So experience, and when I say experience, I mean taste, smell, see, hear, feel, and think that you are one atom in an interconnected universe. Take time to embody, even if that embodiment is, what would it feel like if I were happy? What would it feel like if someone loving were beside me? What would it feel like if I were healthy? What would it feel like if I had abundant resources? And then just notice, instead of creating it, just notice what it feels like. And then write down a goal, and write it down, because the mind is a messy place, as is the body. Take it out of you and put it in the world. So write down a goal on a little piece of paper, tuck it under your pillow, experience that goal with everyone else's goals, everyone working together. Go to sleep knowing that in your sleep you will be, because in your sleep you are astrally everywhere.
Yes.
You're working on it. And then when you wake up in the morning, read that goal again. And it can be a question also, but questions tend to cause anxiety. Read that goal again and notice, who are you talking to? Who's in your body? What are you wanting to do? What are you noticing? What are you remembering? Because all of that, and write it down, all of that will give you so much information. I mean, people with small children can't write it down, you know, but allow it to form in front of you in some way. And it will really give you a guide. I mean, your intuition is there to find the best way. And it is such an important tool if you just remember to use it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Laura. I appreciate that so much. For our listeners, in case you were like, Laura, who again? LauraDay.com. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. You are so down to earth and so
Oh.
generous and lovely. And I really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Mutual respect. Whoa. That's right. And I'd like to remind our listeners that it is never inappropriate to be kind, and without integrity, you have nothing. See you next week.